Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second session of Radically Rural 2021. We're so happy that you guys are all here to join us both in person as well as virtually. My name is Amanda Littleton, and we are part of the hosts for this track, the Land and Community Track. I work with the Cheshire County Conservation District. The focus of the Land and Community Track is exactly what it sounds like, land and community. Land is often the defining feature of a rural community. People's livelihoods are linked to it through agriculture, recreation, forestry, and for many of us, it's what draws us to these regions to live in the first place, the beautiful landscapes. So throughout this track, we're really exploring our connection to the land, whether it's through economic, social, or health benefits, how we all relate to our landscapes. Um, and that's in particular, I think, now with the face of the pandemic, with climate change, all the challenges that our communities are facing. So those are the questions that we'll be exploring throughout this track. And we're very excited to have the Caterpillar Lab as our track sponsor this year. And this session is going to be really great. It's called Exploring Nature, Renewing Communities, focused on recreation economies in this country. And just a little bit of housekeeping. We ask that folks turn off the volume on their phones. We understand that you may be participating through the Socio app in the chat for this session, so you're welcome to do that, but please just keep your volume off. We will also be doing a question and answer with the audience here in person, as well as the virtual audience through the chat feature. So please do chime in to the chat if you are joining us virtually. And thank you. Thank you for your patience as we sort of work through this technology and doing a hybrid event. We really appreciate that, and because it's great that we were able to have so many more people participate both in person and virtually. Before I introduce the speakers, I would just like to share that we're going to have 5 speakers. Some are here in person, some are here virtually. We're going to go through them, and then we're going to open it up to question and answer and have a broader dialogue at that point after each of the speakers had an opportunity to share with you. I will also invite everybody here to participate, whether you're in person or virtually, to check out the poll that is part of this track. I would like to encourage you on the Socio app, there's a place for polls. There's a selection of questions there for us to better understand who our audience is, to help inform sort of who is part of this larger conversation. So we'd love to have you just take a moment at some point during the next 20 minutes and complete that. That would be great. So we have a wonderful group of speakers here with us today. I'm just going to do a round of introductions for you all. The first person I'll introduce is Stephanie Bertaina. And Stephanie is a senior policy analyst with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Office of Community Revitalization in Washington, D.C., where she works with rural communities and small towns to build vibrant, healthy, sustainable, and inclusive neighborhoods and downtowns. Steph coordinates the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program, which is partnering with rural communities across the country to help them leverage the power of outdoor recreation to diversify local economies and revitalize main streets. So Steph received an MS in Environmental Policy and Planning from the University of Michigan and bachelor's degrees from Westmont College. And I have to give a shout out to Steph because she was my sort of partner in crime in getting this session together and pulling together such wonderful speakers. Our next speaker is Megan Lawson. Megan leads Headwaters Economics Research in Economic Development, Outdoor Recreation, and Demographic Change. She is an economist and uses economic and demographic analysis to better understand the issues communities face. She holds a PhD and master's degree in economics from the University of Colorado and a bachelor's degree in biology from Williams College. Kaitlyn Maloney is co-owner of Sustainable Trailworks. Along with her husband, Sustainable Trailworks designs and builds multi-use trail networks throughout the Northeast and also provides consulting in nonprofit management and community development. Caitrin is currently spearheading a multi-year trail development project in Poultney, Vermont, which we'll hear more about throughout this talk. And Caitrin completed a BS in Environmental Science and master's level work in Community Development and Applied Economics at the University of Vermont. Our next speaker is Sarah Pelkey. Sarah is the Economic Development Coordinator for the town of Poultney, Vermont, and a regional planner at the Rutland Regional Planning Commission in Rutland, Vermont. Her background is in community development and planning, marketing and business development, and construction project management. Sarah attended the University of Vermont, where she graduated with a BA in psychology. In her free time, Sarah enjoys visiting New England's historic downtowns, supporting small-scale redevelopment projects, road biking, and spending time with her young daughter and husband. She believes in building healthy communities by empowering citizens to engage with all levels of leadership and by promoting active involvement in placemaking and entrepreneurship. The last speaker that we have is Elyse Peters. Elyse is a partnership enthusiast who fosters collaboration across community sectors in order to improve health outcomes in Walker County, Alabama. As an innovative and authentic communicator, Elyse works with low-resource communities to establish a vision, create connections, and build local leadership capacity to advance the quality of life of their community. Since 2016, Elyse has led a cross-sector team of state and local governments, nonprofits, and private foundations to create a 31-mile Blueway to initiate the Walker County Waterways Initiative, creating 4 new access points and improving 3 existing ones. In 2019, she was selected as an emerging trail leader by American Trails for her work to expand outdoor recreation opportunities. A 4th-generation Roll Tider, Elyse graduated from the University of Alabama's New College with a depth study in environmental justice and civic engagement. Currently, Elyse has returned to the capstone to pursue a master's degree in management through the Manderson Graduate School of Business. Her work through the RERC program has inspired her to delve deeper into the intersection of outdoor recreation, rural economic development, and social entrepreneurship. And we are delighted to have this panel of speakers with us here today. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Megan Lawson to kick us off.
Thank you, everybody. I think and all see my screen and hear me. I'm really delighted to be a part of this panel, and I think I'm going to learn as much as the participants from just listening to the other panelists today. So today I'm going to talk about the elements of an outdoor recreation economy and everything that goes along with it. This knowledge is essential for communities that have an outdoor recreation economy or are developing one, because without understanding how it works, communities aren't able to take full advantage of the economic diversification opportunity or mitigate the associated impact on resources and people. But first, before I go any further, just to tell you a little bit about Headwaters Economics. We are an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit research organization based in Montana, but we work across the US. And our mission is to improve community development and land management decisions by providing data, information, and research to help inform some of the biggest issues that communities face especially around socioeconomic change and land use, like how to manage outdoor recreation, public land management, energy development, and climate-related disasters like wildfire and flooding. And I'm an economist at Headwaters, and I lead our research on outdoor recreation and public lands. So what is an outdoor recreation economy? This presentation is divided into 3 parts. I'm going to start with that, talk a little bit about outdoor recreation economics in the US, and some thoughts for places considering becoming a destination. If you come away with nothing else from this presentation, remember that outdoor recreation is about more than just tourism. So tourism is an essential part, but like the settler shows, recreation can support long-term economic development. And here's sort of a roadmap of how we think about the economics of outdoor recreation. And I'm going to zero in on each of these pieces. So starting with tourism, visitors come, spend money on restaurants, guiding services, and hotels, and then that money continues through the economy to support many other sectors. And so that's really the kernel where things start. But as I mentioned, it's more than that. We think of tourism really as a marketing strategy to bring new residents who first visited as tourists and fell in love with the place. Outdoor recreation helps to recruit new businesses and entrepreneurs, and then in turn helps those business owners recruit skilled employees. And we really start to see a snowballing effect. We also think about the importance of retirement and investment income. It makes up over 50% of all income in a lot of rural counties across the United States. And this we call this non-labor income from retirees and folks with investments supports many sectors across the economy, including construction, healthcare, and professional services like architects and engineers. And we know that retirees move to places with more public lands at a higher rate than places without, and so places with those amenity resources. And all of the above supports local tax revenue to provide essential public services like schools and roads and libraries. We know outdoor recreation also supports a high quality of life for the people who are already living there. The research has found measurable mental and physical health benefits for those who have access to the outdoors, with the biggest gains among elderly and low-income residents. And investments in trails and pathways gets residents active, and research has shown that those investments are less expensive and more effective than a lot of other public health interventions. We know that outdoor recreation can also help to recruit gear manufacturing to communities because it provides a test lab for those manufacturers to do their research and design and testing. And then all of the above supports Main Street businesses, helping to keep communities vibrant. And then finally, outdoor recreation can help recruit new residents to the community. Research has shown that places with recreation amenities have higher rates of in-migration, helping to jobs throughout the community. And this was especially true during COVID as people moved to smaller towns and rural places. So I keep on talking about a recreation economy. And when I'm saying that, I'm thinking of a very specific thing. I'm thinking of recreation dependence as it's defined by the US Department of Agriculture's Economic Service. And these are communities at the top end of the distribution for the share of employment and income in tourism-related businesses, and also at the top end of the distribution for second homes. I think it's important to pause here to mention what a recreation economy is not. First, it's not unilateral. A recreation economy can coexist with agriculture, forestry, oil and gas, and other industries. And there are plenty of examples across the US of communities that have used recreation to even out the cyclical nature of these resource-based economies. Second, outdoor rec is not a silver bullet. It's not going to fix all of a community's woes, but it can contribute to an overall economic development strategy by helping to diversify. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit to talk about recreation economies in the US. So this map, the green shows places that are classified technically as recreation dependent, and the blue are non-recreation dependent. But we know that recreation is alive and well across the US, regardless of whether a community is technically designated as dependent. I'm going to run through 4 economic indicators that we look at to kind of get a pulse of a place. So we know that recreation economies bring more people. This chart shows the net migration rate between 2010 and 2019 for recreation communities in green and the non-recreation communities in blue. And on the left pair of bars is for the rural US and the right is for the US as a whole. And so we can see that people move to recreation communities more quickly than non-rec. And this means that a community's schools, libraries, and grocery stores can stay open. But we have to recognize that the impacts on the culture and the landscape do need to be managed. We also know that wages are lower, and it's important to recognize this in recreation communities because there's still a large share of lower wage service jobs in recreation dependent places. But on the other hand, we are seeing wage growth is much faster in recreation dependent places. We know that recreation economies bring wealth. So this chart shows the percent of counties where people moving in earn more than current residents. And you can see that recreation economies really attract a tremendous amount of wealth. And as I mentioned, with the non-labor income, wealth brings investments, and that supports businesses across all sectors. But wealth also means rising cost of living, particularly around housing. And so finally, we know recreation communities are expensive. It's expensive to live in these places relative to the jobs, to what jobs are paying. So this chart shows the percent of earnings per job that are spent on mortgages, on average, between the recreation and non-recreation places. And so this really presents a challenge for the long-term prosperity for residents. So to summarize economic performance, on the pros side, we see higher migration and growing wealth, and this is helping to support diversified economies to weather cyclical booms and busts. On the other hand, we do see lower earnings and higher cost of living and impacts on community character and resource impacts. But many of these cons can be mitigated with planning and partnerships between recreation businesses and advocates, with nonprofits and local governments. So now I want to turn to some thoughts for those places thinking about becoming an outdoor recreation town. So 6 easy steps. So first, think beyond tourism. As I mentioned, tourism is for those business leaders, entrepreneurs, gear designers, retirees that you want to recruit to your community, and market actively. Really draw people's attention to the potential of living in your town. The second is to invest for quality of life. Invest for the people who are already living there and make it an amazing place to be. This will bring people who want to stay. And think of those infrastructure investments in recreation like trailheads and signage and maps as investments in economic diversification, because these do have measurable returns. And next, anticipate what's coming and what those people will need. Do they need broadband to sustain the Zoomtown boom? Do they need commercial spaces? Are there places for those entrepreneurs and businesses to grow? And is there access for all? Is it not just limited to the wealthy neighborhoods? And anticipate the challenges that will come. Cost of living is higher in high amenity places. So anticipate this and don't be surprised. Next is to think about connections between recreation areas and businesses downtown, physical connections, whether that's shuttles, trailhead sponsors, or other connections to town, and take stock of what's unique and what niche your community could fill, what physical assets your town already has. And next is, I encourage folks to really measure visitation and economic impact. There's some great examples of Methow Valley in Washington, Whitefish, Montana, and Gallup, New Mexico have really done this very well, and they've benefited for the purposes of grant writing and getting community leaders and business owners engaged and justifying future investments, because they're able to point to those investments and say, this is how much money these events, these trail networks that brought into our community. And then finally, think about partners and think about partnerships creatively, including business leaders like the Chamber of Commerce, elected officials and city staff, especially around planning and economic development, as well as those social service nonprofits who are working on housing affordability, transportation planning, and equity. So in conclusion, I want you to remember 3 things from this presentation. First is that outdoor is more than just tourism. It's really a chance to diversify economy. And second, that outdoor recreation is alive and well in the rural US, although many places are not yet technically dependent because there are other things supporting the economy. And so this is a great opportunity for diversification, things right. And finally, it doesn't happen well by accident. To build an economy around it that improves a community's resilience takes planning and intention. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Megan for setting the stage so well. I'm just so pleased to be here with you all at this session, Exploring Nature and Renewing Communities. And just so pleased to be at this conference and so grateful to Amanda for inviting us to be a part of this. This is my first in-person workshop or conference in almost a couple of years, December of 2019, before COVID hit. So I just could not be more pleased to see the people in the room, and thanks to all of you who are joining virtually as well. I look forward to a really great conversation. So today I'd like to just talk a little bit about the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program. My name is Steph Bertaina, and I'm with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Office of Community Revitalization. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I manage the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program, and again, just really pleased to be part of this panel. So what is the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program? It is a planning assistance program to help rural communities and small towns leverage the power of outdoor recreation to revitalize their main streets, recognizing the power of the outdoor recreation sector of the economy that Megan just laid out for us. The recreation economy is big and growing, and in our work in small towns and rural communities across the country over the years, we had seen a growing interest in having outdoor recreation be part of communities' conversations. And so we partnered together at EPA with the USDA Forest Service and also with the Northern Border Regional Commission. So 3 federal agencies came together to support this program that started in 2019. We've been fortunate to partner with 10 communities across the country. You're going to get to hear from 2 of them today, which I'm so excited about, to really create action plans around outdoor recreation and Main Street revitalization. And what we do as federal partners coming to this table is to bring federal and state agency partners, other potential funders to the table to listen to the community's vision for what they want to achieve and match make with some resources. So you'll see a map of our communities and our workshop in Jasper, Alabama, and our virtual workshop in Cambridge, New York. Like everyone else in the world, we had to pivot to a virtual format for most of our workshops, and so we're no stranger to that mode. So again, what is the purpose of this program? It's really to partner with communities to revitalize main streets through outdoor recreation, to strengthen economic opportunities for residents and businesses alike. It's really also about getting people outdoors, recognizing that outdoor recreation can be a really key part of the sustainable use of natural resources and it can improve people's health. So again, we've partnered together with the 3 federal funding partner agencies, but also have worked hand in hand with the 10 communities who applied to this program. Each community formed a local steering committee within their community to really bring together all of the players in the community that are affected by the conversation, could influence the conversation around outdoor recreation in their community. And then we also invite other federal agencies to the table and other state partners, regional organizations who can support the community's vision. So what do I really mean when I say planning assistance? Unlike a lot of federal programs, this is not a direct grant to communities. It really is access to a team of experts who work hand in hand with each community partner to walk through this 3-phase planning assistance process. So the first phase is to work with the local community's steering committee to assess what the community's vision is, understand the context of the community, what they want to achieve with this focus on outdoor recreation and Main Street revitalization. We then convene, sometimes in person when COVID is not restricting us to a virtual format, but sometimes in a virtual way to bring all of the players together to have a conversation. What is the community's vision? What do they want to accomplish? What are the goals that they have around outdoor recreation and downtown revitalization? And what are some of the next steps, the tangible actions that the community wants to take in the very near term, in the next 6 months or 2 years to really make progress on their goals? And I like to call this sort of a more catalytic planning exercise rather than a comprehensive planning exercise. It really is focused on kind of the near term to have some early wins to make successes that lead to longer term success as well. And then the last phase is really implementation. So we work together as a team to turn the conversation we have at the convening into an action plan that is really the community's marching orders for itself. What do they want to accomplish moving forward, and what are the resources to make it happen? So that's where we try to do some matchmaking with funding partners who can be helpful to the community as they implement their vision for the place in which they live. One part of our process is our community self-assessment, and I think we have some in the room for those of you here in person. This is just one of many tools that we use as part of our approach with this planning assistance process, and it really just helps the community walk through where they are in terms of outdoor recreation. Where are they in terms of their Main Street efforts, and where do they really want to go? So it's one tool that might be useful for your community as well. So again, here are our 10 community partners where we were able to work over the last couple of years. And again, you're going to hear from my friends in Poultney, Vermont and in Jasper, Alabama. I could not be more happy to have them join this panel, and I'm so grateful for them to be here to tell their story. But we did work all across the country in the last couple of years. We worked in places like John Day, Oregon, which is transitioning from a timber-based economy to one that's really embracing outdoor recreation as part of their story. We worked with Thompson Falls, Montana, a community that's in a very remote part of Montana in a beautiful setting, but not always a place where people know to stop and stay as they're visiting the recreation resources in the area. We worked with Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and I'll tell you more about Glenwood Springs in a moment. And we also worked with Grants, New Mexico, again, a community rich with natural resources, with trails, with tremendous outdoor recreation assets, and it was really about tying all of those assets together for the community. We worked in places like Giles County, Virginia, with 5 small towns within the county that really are at the doorstep to tremendous resources on their national forests and their waterways, and yet don't always have the infrastructure and the amenities that are needed to support visitors and residents alike as they enjoy those amenities. We worked with Cambridge, New York, as they had recently purchased a new community forest adjacent to their downtown, and we really worked with them to think through how they could connect that new asset to their downtown and to other nearby assets. We worked with Gorham, New Hampshire, in the state in which we are right now, which has tremendous natural assets as well, including the Androscoggin River, and yet the town itself isn't always connected to the river, and so our conversations with Gorham are really about how they could tap into the tremendous potential to really tie downtown Gorham to some of those amenities. And we worked with Freiburg, Maine, to think about how their Main Street revitalization efforts could better support them being a gateway community to the White Mountain National Forest. So that's just a little bit of a flavor of some of our communities, and I thought I'd just take a moment or two to share one story, and then I'm going to turn over to Sarah and Caitrin and with Poultney to tell their story in much more depth. But I did want to give a flavor from just one other community in which we worked. So this is Glenwood Springs, Colorado. We had our workshop with Glenwood Springs August of 2020 in the height of the pandemic. Glenwood Springs is a really beautiful small city on the western slope of the Rockies in Colorado. We worked with the city and a really robust steering committee within the community. Glenwood Springs is rich with natural assets. They have hot springs that they're well known for, fly fishing, whitewater rafting, ski resorts nearby, a really robust trail network, and also Hanging Lake, which is a really popular destination in the White River National Forest. Loved so much that the Forest Service had actually instituted a permitting system so that the resource itself was not overused. So this is a community with a fairly robust and developed outdoor recreation economy, and yet they're also facing the challenges of how to sustain the very resources that make them special and learning how to manage them well, to not overlove those very resources that really make them a special place to be. Tackling issues around affordable housing and creating living wage jobs, and how to really be authentic to who they are as they continue to grow their economy. At the same time, they also have a growing Latinx population in the community, and the city was really struggling through how do we continue to engage everyone in our community and make sure that everyone is benefiting. So these are some of the goals that Glenwood Springs decided to tackle through our planning assistance process with them. And you'll see it's everything from how do they safely and sustainably operate businesses that support the outdoor recreation economy within the context of a pandemic. We were working with Glenwood Springs in the heart of the pandemic response and recovery mode. So we thought a lot about that issue as many, many towns across the country were faced with. Also about economic diversification. I think Megan made this point. How can they think about the outdoor recreation piece of their story as one part of a really robust economic puzzle that they're weaving together, and in a really diverse way? We also talked a lot about affordable housing. This is a theme that came up a lot in the previous session in this track, but how can Glenwood Springs really create affordable housing that's accessible for everyone, both seasonal and permanent residents? And similarly, how can they become a community that's really for all? One that's ensuring that underrepresented groups are involved in the decision-making process, able to access the very resources that make them special, and really benefiting from the outdoor recreation economy. We also talked a lot about physical connections and physical infrastructure needs, like sidewalks and trails, transit, other systems that connect people to downtown and to the resources that are nearby. And lastly, just how they can continue to maintain their authenticity. As they transition and change their economy, how do they continue to be the place that's a wonderful place to live, work, and visit? So since their workshop last August, Glenwood Springs has been hard at work implementing their plan. They received an implementation grant from the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable to support the development of an outdoor recreation gear lending library to make sure everyone has access to these opportunities. They've been hard at work sustaining businesses downtown as they've recovered from COVID, but also from a really devastating fire that actually was taking place in the community the week we held our workshop. But not to be deterred, they have already received a grant from the state of Colorado, a Resilient Communities grant that's really aimed at increasing equitable access to the outdoors, particularly for their growing Latinx population. They've also been connected to statewide efforts around outdoor recreation planning and the state's Office of Outdoor Recreation. And they took their community action plan to their city council, demonstrating their commitment to implementing it. So briefly, what have we learned from this pilot round of this program? And again, you'll hear more from both Poultney and Jasper shortly. But from my vantage point, I would say we've learned through this program that so many rural communities and small towns are really reinventing themselves. They're reinventing themselves, and they're thinking about how outdoor recreation can be part of their story of economic diversification, of downtown revitalization, and really reinventing their communities. We've also learned that place matters. So communities in this regard that are the most successful are those that are thinking about their outdoor assets, but also thinking about their main streets and the places in which they are situated. It's really that marriage of those two that really leads to a lot of success. We've also learned that, I like to say that work works. This approach is needed. We had 170 applications for this program when we first announced it, demonstrating the demand for planning assistance and then also for implementation support to help make their plans a reality. And so we've also seen in the short year or so since our workshops how much success has really resulted from this conversation that was started here. I will also say that in my experience, and again, not just through this program, but in my 12 years or so of working in small towns and rural communities across the country, it's really the community spark plugs like Sarah and Caitrin and Elyse that you're going to hear from that are making things happen in their communities, and building capacity within communities is the best investment in my view. I'll also say that we have really seen that matching communities' vision to the resources to make it happen is where you see the most success. And we've been so pleased to see the federal, state agencies, private support come alongside to support the planning efforts, implementing the plans that have resulted. So I think the last thing I'll say here is just that there's so much that's working well in small towns and rural communities. And my question for all of us is how can we lift up those stories, inspire others, and create more positive examples of rural success? And I do think that this conference and this summit is such a positive and uplifting venue for doing just that. So I just want to applaud the conference organizers in that regard. There's so much discussion of what's wrong, and I think not enough discussion of what's right. So in closing, I will just say that we're in the planning stages for announcing a new call for communities to apply for this program for a second round. So please stay tuned. I put our website there and my contact information. We will be having another round of this program, so would love your help thinking about what communities that you might know who would be interested in being part of this next round of our assistance. And I will also just share a picture of my two favorite outdoor recreation enthusiasts, my kids in our backyard, National Park, Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C., just to say that it's this next generation that's being affected by the decisions we make now. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Sarah with Poultney, and she's going to take it from here.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. It is so nice to be here, and I am so honored to be able to tell Poultney's story in this context. I am incredibly grateful to the EPA RERC program, to Steph, to Amanda, to Radically Rural, and to the Hannah Grimes Center for providing this opportunity for all of us to come together and have this conversation. Poultney is in a really interesting place right now, and I'm grateful to share that with you today. So I am Sarah Pelkey. I am the Town of Poultney Economic Development Coordinator, and we're going to take you through a little bit of an introduction about what Poultney is and why this is so important for us right now. This first view is a image of Lake St. Caitrin, which is an incredible resource in Poultney. Beautiful lake that has been a part of the community and part of the story for a long time. But this view in particular is from the top of the trail network. And we're hoping that many of you get to see it, not just on this slideshow. So the starting place for Poultney. Poultney is located on the Vermont-New York border in the Lakes region of Western Rutland County, about halfway between Rutland, Vermont and Glens Falls, New York. The southern surveyed border between the two states meets the Poultney River behind the former Green Mountain College. Poultney, it's interesting that this says the Lakes region, because one of the things that Poultney is contending with in developing a recreation economy is its identity. Poultney is also known as, it's known by many names. The area that it is in is known by this, is also called the Stone Valley, the Slate Valley, the Lakes region, and increasingly it's being referred to as the Southwest Kingdom. So I have to give a shout out to our friends in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont for that opportunity. This is an aerial photo of the village. Poultney Village is a beautiful setting. It's a very walkable place. It's anchored by the Green Mountain College at the end of the main street, and it is it's walkable. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a moment. It's very much a part of this story. This is our main street, and very located to the new trail system that is being built. It's about 3 miles from here. The other very important part of this story is East Poultney, which is a lovingly preserved historic area. This is a picture of the Baptist Church on the East Poultney Green. Again, the trails that are being built as part of this recreation economy development are integral, and they're very closely located. So we are getting new life on this town green, which is used by many others in the community. And it's just really beautiful. So I think the historic aspects of Poultney are a really important part of this conversation. Also, a little bit more about Poultney as part of the starting place. It's a community of about 3,600 people. Many of those are under 18. Poultney has an elementary school and a small high school, and an informal model is small in size but big in spirit. That is absolutely true. Poultney is very fortunate to have an incredible number of community volunteers and activists who are all coming to this development of a new economy. Volunteerism is alive and well in Poultney, and many services are provided by those who look to be involved or just give back to the community. Major economic drivers in Poultney area include slate quarrying, light manufacturing, education, recreation, and agriculture. There are many businesses, brick and mortar, online, and a combination of both, and new entrepreneurs are always welcome. These photos show a little bit of that history. The slate quarrying history is predominant in the area, in Poultney in particular. We have a number of artists, and on the left here you can see Carrie Furlani, who's a local artist carving a slate monolith as part of a new park actually that's being developed. A little bit about light manufacturing. We have some manufacturing in Poultney, but very limited. First Light is an anchor tenant in terms of manufacturing. On the bottom right, we have a historic traditional use, ice fishing on Lake St. Caitrin. And this is what the community has known for many years in terms of being outdoors. It's a very traditional hunting and fishing type community. And in the center, there's some infrastructure that remains from the quarries. Also, as part of the starting place is the D&H Trail. The D&H is a rail trail that runs through the heart of Poultney. It also goes north to our neighbors in Castleton, Vermont, and continues, although there is a segment that is missing, it continues down through Paulette in the southern part of Vermont as well. This is really important to our story. This is right through Main Street and is being developed. The state of Vermont maintains it and cares for it. It was actually resurfaced last year. But we are trying to find ways to make more use of this. But if you're in Poultney, you will see people on this trail all year long. It's multi-use. There's runners, there's cyclists, there are snowmobiling in the winter. So there is a variety of uses for this trail and a variety of opportunities to enhance the village. I mentioned Lake St. Caitrin. There is a state park in our area. So Lake St. Catherine State Park is very much part of this story as well. And the Slate Valley Trails. Slate Valley Trails is predominantly known for mountain biking, but it is a multi-use trail system. Caitrin will tell us much more about the trail system when she gets up for her presentation, but I love this photo because it shows winter in Vermont. It's iconic. You can go out on your own. It's a safe place, and it's being used by many different generations. So as part of the starting place, I thought I'd include this slide too. It was derived from the EPARC project, and it's really interesting because it tells us what the community thinks about its assets and who they are. So, it's a lot of potential, very beautiful, down home, welcoming, engaged, and friendly. Here we have an inflection point, and this is the reason I think that Poultney has been so needing of this work, this planning work around growing an outdoor recreation economy, but has experienced such change. This is Green Mountain College, which is an institution in Poultney which had been serving as a higher education institution for the community and an anchor establishment for 180 years, and it closed in 2019. So this community in particular had been built around the higher education infrastructure that was there, used to having students, used to having people in the community and on its main street. And when the college closed, actually rather suddenly, the community was kind of looking to itself about how to establish a new identity and a way forward. And thankfully, they decided to kind of go through their assets and realize that, this recreation economy is really something that could happen there. So I included this photo too because this is pre-closure of Green Mountain College. It's a picture of Main Street that shows bikes are already there. You also see an open coffee shop. We have a florist that's right there in town as well. But this is sort of what it looked like before. A little bit of information just to provide some context on some of the changes that in Poultney. From the 2020 census, Poultney was one of the hardest hits area in Vermont in terms of population loss. You can see that whole western Vermont region is all purple, which means that a lot of people moved away from that location between the years of 2010 and 2020. So this is really critical for attracting people to the community and rebuilding it and revitalizing. So as part of the inflection point here, we are talking about scoping it a little bit. This is a really important part of the process. So if your community is considering moving towards a recreation economy, one of the things that is a really critical first step is taking the lay of the land, figuring out what you already have for assets, figuring out who the people in your community are that can help you get grants. I actually should give a shout out to Jonas Rosenthal, a local legend, the former mayor of Poultney, or not mayor, sorry, the town manager of Poultney for 30 years, who was critical to bringing the EPARC project to our community. He wrote the grant, he really lobbied for that. So, it's those types of people that will help your community move forward. But prior to that, there's a planning effort called Poultney 2020. Poultney Comes Together happened after the college closed immediately, and that was a really important planning effort too. It was developed by the Vermont Council on Rural Development, the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and in partnership with the Vermont Community Foundation. 200 people came out for Poultney Comes Together, which is really interesting in a town of 3,600. So it was held in the local high school, and everyone, the 5 goals were established, and establishing an outdoor recreation community was priority number 1. So this is really important to have your community identify this and do it collectively. And the third is an invitation to the EPARC project, which we did all online. Poultney was the last in the cohort, and I think we were grateful because we needed a little time. We had a lot on our plates, and this is the invitation that went out to our community. You'll see in the next slide a little bit about that particular planning process. So Poultney, through that planning, spotlighted its recreation assets, encouraged more residents and visitors to participate in recreation, connect nearby hiking, biking trails to downtown, and work to attract new recreation economy investors. And these are all the people that came. I'm really proud of this, actually. This is amazing. So the series, or the workshop, was a week-long series, and we had attendance throughout the entire thing. So virtual workshops absolutely work, and it was very inclusive, and I think a lot of people were able to present their opinions and their views and their goals that otherwise maybe wouldn't have been able to. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to my colleague and local legend, Kaitlyn Maloney, for just a few minutes, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about the community.
Well, thanks to everyone for being here and all the organizers. This is absolutely excellent, and for the setup here. So Sarah mentioned that I had been involved in some trail work in Poultney. So let me just tell you a little bit about my work, and that will kind of set us up for what I'm going to talk about. So I came to Poultney in 2018. My husband and I decided to go into business together. He was building trail in northern Vermont, and I was working for a nonprofit. We had a client come to us with a really big idea. They wanted to fund the creation of a really large trail network in Poultney. They saw a need in the community. It had been something that was identified by various community forums, as Sarah had mentioned, and they had the resources to sort of support this. So that was an exciting opportunity, because not only were we looking at developing a trail network, but my skills and my background in nonprofit management and community development sort of drove me to propose that we not only develop this trail network, but also invest in the community and sort of not just drop a bunch of trails in Poultney and just kind of leave, but really see what we could do to really engage the community and build the recreation economy, build the health, get the youth involved. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. We started this in 2018. We went through a lot of permitting, Act 250, for those of you that are in Vermont. That's a big deal. We got permitted to build 45 miles of trail, interconnected trail for hiking and biking. So that's really exciting. And that was in 2018. So now, 2021, we've completed 38 miles of trail so far. We have a few more miles to build, and we've done a lot of work to sort of connect the community to the trails. And that's very much what I've been working over the past, I guess, 3-4 years. This is a picture of the school. So in many rural communities, the school is sort of the heart of the community. So this is a good place to start talking about the community and connecting the community to the outdoor recreation economy. So I think my biggest takeaways over the past 3 or 4 years is that community is economy, especially in rural areas. You have to start with the community and build from there. You want to become a recreation town, you have to start with the community. You're not going to start with tourism. Again, you have to start with the community. And how do you gain access to the community? Well, kids are key. So we really want to engage youth, because that is a way to really engage with the community. Again, schools are like the heart of communities. And then a third takeaway is participating in the RERC project. Those structured, rich community conversations can provide a great base to build on and create those social networks that the keynote speaker was talking about. So I'm gonna tell you some stories about some Poultney people, and they sort of embody these 3 concepts that have kind of emerged over the past 3 or 4 years. So on the left here and on the right, this is Ryan. Ryan is a teen mountain bike coach now. This is his new bike, and this is Ryan doing some trail work. So Ryan started working with me and our Poultney Summer Recreation Mountain Bike Camp last year. He had no experience mountain biking, but through that experience, he learned how to mountain bike, he gained leadership experience, and then he came back the next year. And this summer, actually, we started a teen stewardship program in addition to the mountain bike camp program. We also were engaging the mountain bike counselors, the teens, in trail work. And Ryan has a new bike. So his new bike actually was donated by a local person that saw the teens out there and said, I've got this bike and it looks like some of these kids could use bikes. And so he donated the bike to our program just out of sort of running into us. So this is how these connections happen. And this is Tim Johnson of Johnson & Son Bike Works. So Hampton, New York is just over the border into New York, but it basically functions as a part of Poultney. And Tim is wonderful. So Tim actually fixed that bike that Ryan was standing next to because it needed some repair. It was a donated bike. So Tim very generously repaired Ryan's donated bike. And he's been working with SVT to develop, SVT, Slate Valley Trails, to develop trails in downtown Poultney and near the elementary school as a volunteer because he sees that community need. He also participated in the RERC program, and he received a grant to create a fleet of bikes for the Poultney elementary school kids to use on that trail that he helped develop behind the elementary school. So there's a small connection there between Ryan and Tim. Let's go further and see more social connections. This is Bob. Bob is my mechanic. Bob is also Ryan's dad, and Bob is also a new mountain biker. So the other day I went into the shop to get my car fixed, and Bob was so excited to tell me that he had been out on the trails with his 12-year-old daughter, and he said he actually liked it, which was very exciting to hear. And not only was that exciting for me to hear as a passionate mountain biker myself, but also I was excited to hear that he was taking his 12-year-old daughter out because she is also going to be a future mountain bike counselor for our camp. I just know it. So how does this fit to the recreation economy? Well, in a small way, Bob was also asking me about these bike racks and hitch mounts, and people in town are asking him now that mountain biking has come to Poultney in sort of a big way. You know, what about these bike racks? And so he's seeing the interest in his mechanic shop, which is really interesting. All right, one more separation here. So on the right, Mark and Owen Teeter. Mark's on the left. He sold the mechanic shop to Bob, the one in the previous slide. And his son, Owen, on the right, was living in Jackson Hole when the pandemic hit. Owen moved home, and Mark, having retired from his mechanic shop, they decided to fix up their existing infrastructure. They have a set of camps on the lake, and they're opening a bike hostel to host mountain bikers there on the lake. And Owen's not going to go back to Jackson Hole. He's going to stay in Poultney, which is really exciting. And both Mark and Owen participated in the RERC program. And on the left there is Owen participating in a Slate Valley Trails work night. So at some point someone mentioned, I think it was during the morning session here, about new people, new Vermonters coming back. Well, Owen was born here, but he's spent time in Jackson Hole. He has immediately gotten involved in the local trail stewardship group, Slate Valley Trails. He's doing work nights, he's helping with local events. So he's really jumped in to help out, which is just a demonstration of that. Now we get to Michelle. Michelle is a lovely individual. And if you can't read her shirt, it says, "Welcome to the fabulous Poultney, Vermont, home of Lake St. Catherine. What happens stays here," but nothing ever really happens here. So Michelle is the director of the local senior center. She participated in the RERC project, and she learned about Slate Valley Trails through that workshop. She decided she wanted to do trail work. And so she's been coming out to trail nights. So her and Owen are there on the right, standing next to each other. And she also wants to get her seniors involved in the teen stewardship program. We were talking about next summer having the seniors come out and work alongside the teens. The teens can teach the seniors how to do trail work, which sounds really exciting. So that's my story. So you can see the thread of those three sort of concepts moving through the people of Poultney. The other thing that I think that has become apparent through my work the past few years in Poultney is that there are unexpected connections that can be made in the community and outdoor recreation realm. Here's a picture of our lovely library. Hello. So the Slate Valley Trails partnered with the Poultney Public Library to host a story trail at the Slate Valley Trails. So this is, the story trail is about 17 little stops around a very beginner-friendly trail that you can walk or bike, and geared towards children. The children can go with their families around and read the story as it unfolds throughout the trail. So that's an example of a really sort of unexpected partnership between outdoor recreation and community groups. And we've found other sort of unexpected partnerships with other local community groups. Some of them are listed on this slide. Stone Valley Arts is interested in doing an art show that focuses on the natural beauty and also trails and recreation. So that's another example of possible collaborations that are somewhat unexpected. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Sarah and leave you with a youth absolutely sending it off a rock.
Scope it, feel it, send it. So anyone who is a mountain biker might be familiar with that type of assessment of what you are looking at here. So we are in the send it phase. Yeah, Poultney is gaining momentum now with some of the work that we've done. And I think it's really important to talk about some key takeaways from what I've seen. Caitrin mentioned in the previous slide those connections. And it's really important for me to underline that with how these other people that are in your community are coming together to promote the community, and they see the health and prosperity of your community being something viable coming from a recreation economy. So look to others in your community that maybe don't connect exactly. I noticed another track at Radically Rural that was talking about arts and arts as public engagement. And I have a slide a little bit later here that kind of explains how that happens and what that means to your community, how they can use art to cope with the changes that are in a community, especially one that's going through so much change as Poultney is. So the community is really being created around the trails and their potential. Ambassadors are starting to share the story. We have some wonderful people that have been there all along, but more and more, even weekly, we have people that are coming together and saying, hey, did you go to Slate Valley Trails this weekend? I was out on the lake. Or have you heard about this particular hike? Or actually next week they're starting to plan for youth to use the River and Rail Trail, which is actually in our village, for a Halloween hunt. So people are coming out of the woodwork and they're excited about this. So those partnerships are being forged with businesses and other civic groups. The previous slides mentioned Rotary and your chambers of commerce and other organizations that will benefit from this. And it doesn't necessarily need to be explained to them how they will benefit. I think if you just present them the opportunities and present them the people, those civic groups and organizations understand how to take it from there and make it their own. Infrastructure is incredibly important to establishing a recreation economy. In Poultney, our Main Street will be studied next. So the infrastructure is being assessed to ensure it supports a new recreation economy, and in our case, alternative transportation. As mentioned previously, those signage, wayfinding, streetscape improvements, and transportation networks are really important, especially if you're on two wheels. Strategic marketing to ensure that change is incremental and fits the community's goals and commonly held identity. It's easy to market. It's not so easy to have people come to your community and have them not experience what they were expecting. So make sure that you don't get too far ahead of yourself when you are marketing your community. You really want people to come back, or to come and then return. And ultimately, we'll welcome new businesses. Since we've been doing this work, and in light of the closure of Green Mountain College and the pandemic, Poultney's Main Street has seen new ownership in a number of different retail and restaurant establishments. In fact, at least five different establishments changed hands over the past year and a half, which is really incredible. They're, as Caitrin mentioned with Owen Teeter, they're, in our case, descendants of people who have lived there for a number of years, or they've worked there when they were younger. So it's really the next generation that's coming to these businesses and making it their own. And they're awfully excited about the opportunity for recreation in Poultney. This is one other thing that's next in Poultney. We're creating a public space. This is Slate Quarry Park, which is being built on Main Street as we speak. Slate Quarry Park is the brainchild of a group of citizens that are very integrally connected with the quarrying industry and had been in development for about 4 years. They finally got to the point where they're ready to build, and they're building this summer. So this is a very important green space that's being built on Main Street, one that doesn't really exist. You need to make sure that, again, your visitors that are coming to use the recreation also have places to go and spend some time and enjoy themselves. So, after they go to Taps Tavern and have an evening dinner, they can come and spend some time in Slate Quarry Park. We're also looking at using the park for events and, hoping to take an opportunity here to have an educational component, involve the area youth again in what this means. So, look outside the box a little bit too. It doesn't need to be entirely focused on the recreation economy, but you do need to make sure that the assets are there to support that. And of course, the big question, what's happening at Green Mountain College? So the college has been bought by a private entrepreneur, and it has opened a K-6 grade school starting this fall of 2021. So this is incredible news for our community. There's a lot of hope around that, around what's happening there. And they are also coming to the table and being a part of the recreation economy that's developing. They see the value and see the potential there with the other mixed use development that they are proposing on campus. So that's what's next in Poultney. And back to the arts, I thought I'd share this with you. I have never actually read it aloud, so this will be the first time, but it's a poem that's making its way around our community. And I thought, it would be nice to share this in terms of, the arts' engagement, but it also talks about outdoor recreation. So Poultney rises. Together we rise, small town with a huge heart, connected to our past while gazing to our future. Trails will lead us to our neighbors and into the unknown, a sense of community like never before. Together we rise. To create the town of our dreams, a place of inclusion, old, young, and those in between. 10 gardens for future's blossom. Together we rise, with a new life for an old school and a Main Street that thrives. Renewed and reclaimed up from the ashes, the funeral pyre lit. But before the last ember grows dim, Poultney will rise to shine once again, like the sun on a new day full of light and promise. That was written by Carolyn Solatella this February. So we will leave you with one other additional thing that we have developed, very exciting, and Caitrin has incredible connections, so please make sure to use connections of the people that are coming to you. This is a short video clip. It's a teaser video, and we're going to have a look at how the town of Poultney, along with the Gunnison Valley of Colorado and Knoxville, Tennessee, are working at the intersection of community development and recreational trail building in this video teaser by Bryce Sherbach Rides for a film series called Intersections, produced by Stan's No Tubes. We are very grateful to be included in this and welcome you to the teaser video.
I know there's lots of great riding, albeit I haven't been to many parts of the country, but I really don't want to go anywhere else. I mean, I have plenty to keep me occupied here, and it's right out my back door.
We have voices, and we use those voices, I think, to make the community good for everyone.
I know that every little rock and root can be like a story or something to bond over with people. That's why it's so important to me, yeah.
Oh,
pride to share this place with other people. And just, I think they see my genuine passion for this place. And, you know, just getting to live here and recreate here is an incredible gift. And that's something that I hope I never take for granted.
I'm Elyse Peters, and I'm really honored to be a part of this panel today. It's been great working with Steph over the last, I guess, few years now. It's strange to think about that, but and I'm really grateful to be one of the presenters in this session. So before I jump into the RERC process in Jasper, I wanted to provide some context for Jasper. So you're probably asking yourself, where is Jasper, Alabama? Well, Jasper lies in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains and is the county seat of Walker County. It is located about 45 minutes northwest of Birmingham, which is the largest city in Alabama, and along the I-22 corridor. And Jasper started as a coal town, and in the last recent years, the coal industry has been the prominent economic driver, but with the decline in the coal industry, our community is taking a different look at our natural resources and how we use them. So I wanted to share some background on our community efforts that really laid the foundation for the RERC work in Jasper. One, our community would not have been competitive for the RERC process had it not been for these two existing community-driven initiatives, Jasper Main Street and the Health Action Partnership. And while they have different missions, they're both an aggregation of like-minded people who want something better and different for both Jasper and Walker County. So in 2015, Jasper Main Street, or the Main Street Program of Alabama, selected the city of Jasper to start Jasper Main Street to revitalize downtown Jasper. Jasper Main Street has been successful in implementing the National Main Street Center's 4-point approach that aims to create long-term growth and a sustainable economic impact to revitalize downtowns. And as you can see, Jasper Main Street has been very successful in bringing funding and new businesses to downtown Jasper. In addition to funding, Jasper Main Street brought a renewed image and brand for downtown, as seen here with our Flourish logo. And the other organization I mentioned, the Walker County Health Action Partnership, was the health collaborative that I managed. When I arrived to Walker County in 2013, there was an acknowledgement that health outcomes were poor in Walker County, as the county had consistently ranked 67 out of 67 counties for overall health outcomes in Alabama, according to the Robert Wood Johnson's County Health Rankings. So in 2014, HAP was formed to address the chronic health issues as well as overall community well-being. HAP has an expanded view of health and what impacts our health, acknowledging that 80% of health outcomes are impacted outside the traditional healthcare setting. And our Livable Communities Priority Group is made up of individuals and partners working to create greater access to outdoor recreation opportunities with the goal of reducing physical inactivity. We want to get people off the sofa and into the woods. So one of the first projects that the Livable Communities Partners pursued was to look at what we had instead of focusing on the things that our community lacked. And this, through this process, we called it our open space inventory. And we actually partnered with our local regional planning commission. So if you don't know who your local planning commission is, then get to know them. Not only do they have access to certain types of federal public transportation funds that can be used for active transportation efforts, but they can also provide technical planning assistance. So through that process, we realized that we were rich in natural resources. Not only did we start to reimagine our natural resources, we also started to reimagine outdoor recreation in our community. Jasper and Walker County, similar to Poultney, has predominantly embraced hunting and fishing as an outdoor recreation pastime. And we wanted to build on that foundation to create a variety of outdoor recreation experiences for different users. And so two of the main opportunities we identified was Walker County Lake and the potential of a waterway blueway system. So Walker County Lake was identified as an existing outdoor recreation asset that could be enhanced. Historically, it's been a fishing lake that was managed by our state's Department of Conservation and Natural Resource, or I'll just refer to them as DCNR moving forward. So in 2015, the Livable Communities Partners went through a community planning process to develop a master plan for the lake. And again, based on this renewed vision for the lake, we started with small incremental wins to start building credibility with our state agency, as well as public support for the project within the community. So for the last 4 years, partners have been expanding trails on the west side of the lake, promoting it as a stop on the West Alabama Birding Trail, adding kayak rentals, and building an accessible archery park. And through all of that work, we established a relationship with DCNR. And in 2018, the city of Jasper annexed the lake into the city limits, not only bringing a new partner to the table, but also making the connection to downtown Jasper seem not so far away, as the lake is only 3 miles from downtown. Another outdoor recreation opportunity that the open space inventory identified was the potential for 4 blueways or water-based trails. So similar to how we approached Walker County Lake, our partners used the small win strategy to build momentum. In 2015, we discovered the Alabama Scenic River Trail, who not only designated 4 of our waterways on their trail, but also helped us develop a strategy to create access to our local scenic waterways. After the success of building 1 new access point, in 2017, the Walker County Commission received a grant from the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham to develop 3 new and improve 4 existing access points to create a 31-mile blueway that connected the northern and southern parts of the county. This project allowed us to establish relationships with local governments, and we were able to leverage those relationships to minimize project costs while also building public support for the project. The city of Cordova is a great example. We provided the vision and the funding for materials, and they provided the manpower and the equipment to do the work to create a new access point. Not only did we create access, but we cleaned up what was considered a public dumping site prior to our efforts. So as you can see on the left-hand side, kind of before and after of that space. And through our partnership with DCNR, we obtained private funding to improve a public boat launch, to add a fishing pier, created an accessible bathroom, added a pavilion, and created a historic storyboard that showcased how this space has been used for public recreation for generations. And as you can see on the right-hand side, those are photos of what is named Disney Lake. No relation to Walt, by the way. And through these activities, we created a rapport with local and state governmental entities that establish trust and leverage resources, again, to minimize project costs. I can't stress enough how important it is getting the community involved to maximize ownership and minimize costs. It might take a bit longer, but it is important to establish a joint vision, build relationships, identify resources, and have people have some skin in the game. Again, it is their community. And as you can see here on the bottom right, that's actually the mayor of Cordova and his daughter Tallulah. So over the last few years, Jasper Main Street and HAP have been operating separately yet supportingly. In 2017, Jasper Main Street promoted Walker County Lake as a staycation during spring break. And in 2019, Jasper Main Street Partners started Slow Spokes, a community bike share program, and a local riding group that they say, spandex are not required. And through the RERC program, we really saw the potential to braid these two initiatives and identifying common goals to align our work. So on one hand, you had the budding downtown and the process of revitalization through Jasper Main Street's efforts and a growing outdoor recreation interest for new amenities through the work of the Livable Communities Group and Health Action Partnership. And by having both of these community-driven efforts on the ground and making progress, we felt that our community would be competitive when applying for the RERC. So I'll kind of shift a little bit into kind of the RERC and the outcomes. So as you can see here, our local steering committee was made up of key HAP and Jasper Main Street stakeholders and partners, local, regional, and state representatives, as well as folks from both the public and the private sector. And leading up to the workshop, our local steering committee participated in 3 calls with RERC support staff and completed, as Steph mentioned, the community self-assessment. And while some of our partners had worked together in the past, having the self-assessment tool provided a new lens to view our community and our outdoor recreation and economic development work. And when we got together to complete the assessment, our committee really started to form and see how each of us fit into this broader vision. And one of the best outcomes from the process was being connected to state and federal resources. For example, in our original application, one opportunity we had identified was working towards Jasper being a trail town or a gateway to the Bankhead National Forest. However, we did not know anyone from the Bankhead to engage as part of the planning process. And the RERC support staff were able to connect us with Andy Scott, who's in the kind of bottom picture to the left, who's the district ranger for the Bankhead National Forest. And he's been a wonderful addition to our local steering committee. And then we had kind of 2 full days, I guess, with a community tour where we went to a lot of the places that I mentioned, highlighting those recreational assets, and then also had our community workshop. And it was just really great to get everyone in the same room. We literally had our workshop 2 weeks before the world shut down. Little did we know what was going to happen or how what was going to happen would impact outdoor recreation. But the mapping exercises that the RERC staff provided really helped community members start to visualize these opportunities for themselves, making connections and identifying new opportunities. And it also provided our community an opportunity to have just casual conversations with state and federal agency representatives. So here, I won't go into this, but here are just some of the 4 goals that our community selected and are included in our community's action plan. So now I want to talk about how that action plan has been leveraged locally to really be a catalyst for outdoor recreation. So in Walker County, or at Walker County Lake, the RERC really helped accelerate those improvements. The city of Jasper signed a formal agreement with their state agency, DCNR, to maintain the trails, as well as cut in new ones. We also partnered with local Eagle Scouts to add a series of benches and footbridges along the existing trails. We partnered with our Rotary Club in Jasper to build an elevated birding platform that looks like a giant nest, working with the Birmingham Audubon to design an educational birding sign. And these are both efforts to continue to highlight the lake as a stop on the West Alabama Birding Trail. And there are 2 bald eagles that nest out at the lake, and so the platform provides a great viewing opportunity when they go fishing. And one steering committee partner, the Freshwater Land Trust, hosted Red Rock Tuesday, a local TV segment that highlights outdoor recreation spaces in the Birmingham metro area. And this was the first one that was hosted outside of Birmingham. The mayor spoke, the commissioner of DCNR spoke, and it was a really great day for partners to reflect on improvements. And we even hosted the ribbon cutting for the birding platform. And another impact of the RERC process in aligning outdoor recreation was a priority in aligning that within Jasper Main Street and the city of Jasper. Portions of the Outdoor Recreation Action Plan, or the RERC Action Plan, has been incorporated into the city's overall comprehensive plan. And almost 32% of residents surveyed said outdoor recreation opportunities were one of their top 3 issues regarding the future of Jasper. Jasper Main Street, also in partnership with Rotary, created a pocket park along Town Creek, expanding sidewalks and adding outdoor fitness equipment, as you can see on the right. And this was the first step towards developing Town Creek. And in the middle is kind of a conceptual idea and potential for that pocket park. And Town Creek was identified as a potential greenway to connect the east and west sides of downtown, and that kind of came out of the RERC workshop. The creek has kind of been more of a break in people's mind downtown, but now we're really seeing it more as a connector and an opportunity for economic revitalization downtown. Jasper Main Street has engaged a real estate redevelopment firm out of Birmingham for the potential of retail and housing development downtown along the creek. And walkability is a huge part of the redevelopment. And as part of the Town Creek redevelopment project between Jasper Main Street and the city of Jasper, the city has announced plans to renovate Scherer Auditorium. In the heart of downtown and along Town Creek, the auditorium was constructed as part of the New Deal. This historic building has been an eyesore over the last few decades, but the efforts to improve and restore downtown, as well as buildings along Town Creek, have brought a renewed vision for this building. The city is already in the process of removing the facade of the 1970s to expose the original stone. There are even talks that the city of Jasper might be moving its expanding town or city hall into the building. And earlier I mentioned efforts to create access to public waterways in order to develop blueways across the county. And so another one of our steering committee members from DCNR, we established that relationship, kind of continue to foster it through the RERC process, and that was absolutely invaluable. With a better understanding of the outdoor recreation vision for our community and partners in place willing to collaborate, part of a recent settlement has been allocated to our community to improve and expand access along the Mulberry Fork of the Black Warrior River, the third of the 4th ASRT designated waterways. Additionally, during the pandemic, our existing access points were greatly used by local and regional travelers. One of our county commissioners who has helped with the Waterways Project, who's always been commented on the usage of one of the new access points in his district. And while he's always been supportive of the work, it really was kind of really seeing how beneficial that asset was for the community, especially during the pandemic, that he's really starting to understand the value of this work. So the pandemic has had tremendous impact on outdoor recreation, both positive and negative in some areas, but in our community, it has revived a connection to the great outdoors, increasing its value and making this work even more relevant. There we go. And so another impact of the pandemic has been on people's willingness to travel and how they travel. One unique perspective that the RERC brought was this idea of a drive shed. We'd been thinking about regional travelers and taking advantage of the new I-22 corridor, but we'd never thought about the potential reach we could have until we saw the map that's in the top left corner of the screen. And lastly, another new opportunity identified from the workshop was a possible mountain bike park between downtown and Walker County Lake. You know, we are at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and so we do have the terrain for mountain biking. No one would have anticipated how COVID impacted and connected people to biking. Our local Slow Spokes group expanded during COVID, and over a year later, the group continues to average 50 to 60 riders each week and have a fleet of bike rentals available, and those were donated by local businesses. And now the community is advocating the city of Jasper for a municipally run mountain bike park. As you can see in the middle is the conceptual design for that. And so with this initial momentum behind mountain biking, we decided to apply for an ORR grant for an RERC, sorry for all the acronyms, implementation grant. And a local group of mountain bikers formed a 501c3 at the end of 2022. And they have been instrumental in implementing the grant to improve an underutilized trail between Jasper High School and Jasper Elementary into a multi-use trail. So thanks to the funding received from ORR, the group has been coordinating with the school board to continue planning and rebranding this cross-country trail into a multi-use trail. But the mountain bike group, JAM, Jasper Area Mountain Bikers, has not stopped there. The RERC vision and the ORR grant has really been a catalyst to bring mountain biking to Jasper overall. As the group continues with the larger rebranding efforts in partnership with the Board of Education, members wanted to showcase this new asset in the community. So in partnership with a group out of Birmingham, we hosted the Hammies back in August at the downtown trail. The Hammies is a fun, inviting atmosphere for folks of all ages to experience mountain bike racing. Slow Spokes riders were there, people of all ages raced, and it was the first time many folks had ever been on a bike in the woods. And even the little Hammies were able to participate on a smaller course at the elementary school. And, you know, it was really heartwarming to see young kids on their bikes enjoying the sport for the first time. And as Caitrin said, kids are the key. And this is John. He's the founder, one of the founders of JAM. And he, prior to the pandemic, he was actually a private pilot. But since then, he's remained at home, spending time with his family and getting involved in the community. His experience in GIS, he has experience in GIS and has used those to help us create trail maps for the project. And he's also been spearheading the communication with the board. And he'll also be attending an upcoming IMPA Trail Lab with another JAM member. And so we realized that as we build these trails, we also need to build the knowledge and the skill set within our community to not only build them, but maintain these trails. So I will conclude by stating that the RERC process has allowed our community to not only elevate our outdoor recreation efforts, but create alignment and solidify new opportunities to grow outdoor recreation as an economic driver in our community. While we have a long way to go with shifting our community's perception of outdoor recreation, we're getting there through this new renewed vision for our community. So thank you all.
All right, so we're going to be shifting into a little Q&A here, and we're going to start with questions from the in-person audience, if there are any. So love to just welcome any questions to get us started. Yes.
Hi. I would anticipate if I tried this in my community that I would get pushback. In my community, it would be just people who just didn't want anybody who wasn't living in the community. How did any of you answer that, if you ever heard that?
Are you asking about the RERC process and bringing experts into the community to lead the planning conversations?
32% at the workshop, I think it was in Alabama, said that outdoor recreation was their top 3 priority. That's not a lot of people. And so what about the other 70% of people who don't think it's that important? What do you say? How do you convince people that this is a good thing for the community?
Well, Elyse may have something to add about that specific statistic from Jasper, but I would say from, kind of my perspective, working with this, group of communities that we got to work with through Recreation Economy for Rural Communities, is you do have to have that interest at the community level. And, going where the energy is really important. And I, again, would be curious to hear, Jasper's story or Poultney's story in terms of that. I mean, there are always going to be, community members who are skeptical. I mean, I can think of some of our, community partners through this program whose, whole economies are shifting, whether that's, away from timber or oil and gas or, coal. And, having the conversation around, is outdoor recreation part of our story, is a real conversation to have. And sometimes, the community has to have that conversation to see if there's the energy to do it. But I think having kind of a willing cohort of community members is really key. And then building on, what you have and sort of building on those sort of small successes and the people who have some energy around it. But I don't know, Elyse, do you have ideas?
Yeah, I would absolutely, because, I think a lot of people don't think about Jasper or Alabama as being kind of very forward thinking and kind of we want to keep things to ourselves. But there are absolutely people in the community that, don't necessarily agree, or they just want to hunt and fish and that's it. But I think through this process, it really brought like-minded people together that kind of felt like outliers in that thought. And by having this process really brought people together and made them realize that, no, there are other people in this community that want this. And, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease and people only complain about things, but they don't write good reviews about things. So I would really say that it brought out a lot of people that I didn't even know were very passionate about this kind of work in the community. And so what that does is it gives them a platform and kind of strength together and really starts building that momentum. And you really start to hear those kind of folks that were the loudest voices at the beginning, those naysayers, either quiet or actually hop on board and see the benefit of what you're doing, because it benefits them as well.
On, bringing together the people that do care, and that sort of spreads, and that you can build momentum there. And what I was talking about with the community engagement, that's sort of like a parallel process. Like we were doing that community engagement, and then we had the RERC. And so again, you're like going towards where people are interested and going towards the positive and just building on that positive momentum.
So my question was similar, just in that I'm coming at this from an outside perspective. I'm not from Vermont, and that's where I've been brought in as a coordinator with 4 very rural towns. And I've just started having my select board meetings and that kind of orientation process. And yeah, the resistance is definitely real. And so I'm wondering, have you had success? And I think the smallest town I heard was 3,600 people. My towns are 1,000 to 2,000. Have you had success on that small of a level?
Yeah, I will say, we had community partners this round that were from, really, really small towns up to, larger communities like maybe Jasper and Glenwood Springs were on the upper end of population. But yeah, I would say, for us, so much of it is just asking really good questions and kind of coming in with an open mindset. I will say just one quick anecdote. One of the ideas for this program came from a community that I was able to work with in the northwestern part of Pennsylvania through another program that our office ran called Local Foods, Local Places. And so we were working with this county in a rural part of Pennsylvania, purportedly on local food. And we did talk about local food through that process. And yet there was this energy around this one town called Marionville that had this historic train depot. It was at the gateway to the Allegheny National Forest. And the workshop and the energy went toward that project. And it became really a focus on how do we renovate the train depot? How do we tie our trail system together? How do we connect better to the National Forest? And we only learned that because of the community engagement and because of asking the curious questions of what do you care about? And starting with the positive, frankly, too, kind of going to the initial question, what do you love about your community? You know, all topics aside, but what is like really special about your community? What do you love? And we always start that with our workshops as well. Asking those simple questions can kind of reveal where the energy, you know, maybe can go.
Yeah, I might add to that that a small community that establishes a recreational economy will have impacts on its region. You will absolutely need your neighboring communities to be a part of this. In Poultney, we've already started having conversations around that because the community is small. And some of the biggest ambassadors and advocates for this work in Poultney are some from surrounding communities: Hampton, New York, Middletown Springs, Castleton, Paulette. And those communities are starting to see and come to the table a little bit more. So if there is that interest in the assets in your area or in a very small community, engage the other communities around you to see if they would like to come to the table around this and try to grow it there too.
Are there other questions from the room?
Thank you. I'm curious of the population impact. If one believes that recreation is an entree to a desirable living location, have you observed, it might be a positive during the COVID crisis, that people have chosen to relocate to communities that have made these rural development recreational investments?
Well, of course, all I have is anecdotal stories, but certainly in Poultney, I mean, I moved there because of recreation, so I'm one. But just this spring, a couple moved to Poultney because it was within commuting distance to Glens Falls and New York and had trails. And I just went out on the trails with that guy last weekend. So there's that story, and then like probably 5 other families. And for a community like Poultney, that is significant to have like 5 families move for recreation in 1 year. And COVID aside, I don't know about that.
I'd like to see, maybe perhaps Megan has more to add to that as well, because she did allude to some of the statistics around that earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. And we are definitely seeing, you know, mostly, unfortunately, we don't have the data isn't in yet on migration and people moving to places, but where we're seeing that reflected is in housing prices, where we do have more up to date data, and we're definitely seeing a surge in housing prices, and I think in recreation places, and I think a lot of that is due to in-migration, people moving to these areas.
A couple of the presenters commented about a tension between hunting and fishing and the new trail systems. I'm just curious about tension between different kinds of trail uses. So you can build a great trail network for mountain biking, but it's not always compatible for hiking, say, or you've got a good Nordic ski network that then the snow machines wreck, or you can classic ski but not skate ski. So I'm wondering if you have some advice for how you balance between the portfolio of different possible trail users versus a dedicated kind of, it seems like we're going all in with mountain biking, and now the horseback riders are kind of left out to dry or something like that.
Sure, that's a great question. And I think it really comes down to planning. So in our case in Poultney, we started from scratch with a professional trail designer and builder. That was my husband, that was able to take a look at the land, see what it could support as far as, you know, trails and where they could be located, and also interest from the community and what they were looking for, and designed a network that would be accessible by all levels of mountain bikers, have opportunities for hiking, reduce conflict by separating users. You know, we have some one-way trails, for instance, that are specific to mountain biking, and then we have other trails that are specific to hiking. So that's a matter of like definitely taking the time to do the planning upfront, Not all communities have that opportunity because a lot of communities already have existing trails, but there are ways that you can go in and make some changes to the network in a thoughtful way in order to accommodate a variety of uses. And we see no issues with hikers and bikers, and our trail data suggests that there are just as many hikers as there are bikers because we do have trail counter data. And you know, we don't really see issues from that. But I think, again, it comes down to the planning and how the trails are laid out.
One other just anecdote around that, and I wish our Gorham, New Hampshire friends were here on this panel too, because I think Gorham, their workshop focused a lot on, you know, that challenge of ATV use versus non-ATV use, and how do you ensure compatibility of users and all of that. And so I think they're a good case study to sort of look at in this regard, and they've done some kind of innovative things in terms of digitizing their maps for both ATV and non-ATV use. I know they've done some work to kind of redirect ATV traffic kind of away from their main street because there were some conflicts and some noise challenges with that. But I would also just say, you know, in all of our workshops and our work, we always ask the first question of what does outdoor recreation mean to you? And that kind of reveals, you know, from a community perspective, what are all the activities that people value and love, and making sure that all of those interests are kind of represented at the table in the conversation so that you can have that effort to sort of do the planning from like a macro scale where you have the chance. So I definitely think, you know, widening the table and inviting everyone in has been helpful in my experience too.
We have time for one more question if anybody has one in the room.
Thank you very much for these presentations and case studies. It's really been so inspirational to see examples from different parts of the country. And so thank you for your work. And my question is about the future. And you've each alluded to the fact that you need volunteers and people in the community who build their skill sets to maintain trails and all the other kind of things that spring from this work. And I'm just wondering what kind of planning you need to do to kind of ensure that the trails will still be around and well maintained and insurable if you need to have insurance in the future. And is there a revenue stream that you can identify that helps bring that back so that you can ensure that?
I can take a crack at it first, and then maybe Elyse, you want to weigh in as well. So, you know, stewardship is really important to think about. And as part of a trail building company, a lot of people come with real excitement about building trails. And I always have to give them a little bit of a reality check, because the building of the trails is like the wedding. It's the really exciting part. And then the stewardship is the marriage, and that goes on, you know, hopefully for a really long time. And it's not as exciting necessarily. So I think, you know, stewardship really is about building community. And so we've worked to do that through the youth and getting the youth involved, and also through Slate Valley Trails and just trying to broaden the net as far as possible. And then also working with Slate Valley Trails to build sustainable revenue streams. The idea is to have the trails open for free to the public. That creates challenges, right? And so we're trying to build capacity within the Slate Valley Trails group to raise the money in order to complete the stewardship, because taking care of a lot of trails isn't necessarily always feasible with just volunteers. So I think you need to think beyond that and think realistically. Some numbers that have been floated to me through various groups. You might have heard of Bentonville, that's supported by the Walton Family Foundation out in Arkansas. They plan on about $1,000 per mile per year for trail stewardship costs if you were to pay for that. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. It's not a small task. So I guess my answer is you just need to really put a lot of thought into it and real planning on the front end before building anything.
Yeah, and I also would kind of like...
It also really depends on the scale of the recreation economy that you're building, so, or attempting to build, which is something that will evolve over time. As your community comes to the table and starts to develop it, it will be very small, and it will be volunteers, and it will be the people that are invested in it and want to use it. But if, as you grow a recreation economy, and depending how big your destination becomes, it eventually becomes a part of the sense of place for that community. It becomes an industry unto itself, depending on how far you want to take it. The other really important piece of that is the stewardship by youth. So if you are bringing the younger members of your community to this asset and engaging them with the recreation and really like creating a love around it, they will take ownership of it as they grow and want to maintain it. So I'll leave that there, and maybe Elyse or Megan wants to add.
Yeah, I wanted to go off what kind of Caitrin had mentioned. I think also really understanding, I mean, it will have to start kind of at a volunteer level, but also understanding what other resources are in your community and what other partners you kind of have in your corner. We have a local community foundation in Jasper that has been, I mean, they're underwriting the JAM members to be able to go get those skills from the EMBA workshop. And they've been really instrumental in helping support and bring in or letting us go to different conferences or opportunities to build our skill sets to bring back into the community. And then also, again, really focusing on those kind of public partnership, public-private, private being the foundation, but public, a lot of the work that we did, the municipalities, were really instrumental in helping kind of establish kind of a foundation, and then really getting our volunteers to come in and kind of fine tune and then sustain those trails for the future.
I do have a question from a virtual attendee, and I think this one might go to Megan, but I'd be interested to hear from others as well. And the question is what partners should be sought out for measuring the impacts of a growing outdoor recreation economy? Because I know that was something that was brought up earlier, the importance of measurement.
I think tourism bureaus, whether that's at the state or regional level, they have at their fingertips a lot of really good data, and also oftentimes have that expertise for of how to do local surveys and economic impact studies. So I think that's a place to go. There are folks at who the Outdoor Alliance has used a bunch at Eastern Kentucky University. Have done a bunch of economic impact analyses. We also do those too. I didn't want to toot our own horn, but we're working on some exciting research right now to take advantage of novel data sources. So like weather and app data and how often people are using Google search trends, and combining that with some limited trail counter data to come up with estimates of trail use. So there are quite a lot of resources out there.
Anyone else like to chime in on that last question? Okay, well, with that, we are slightly over time, but this has been wonderful. Please join me in thanking our panel.